The rhythmic dripping of water from the ceiling, other than the occasional shuffling of rats, is the only relief from the eerie silence in this dim, musty chamber. Down the corridor, where bustling activity had once emanated, now echoed with an unnatural silence. The calm before the storm. A couple days ago, when your feet were aching from running so hard, the sight of this fortress was such a relief. You were awestruck by the embattlements of the castle, but that all paled as you limped through the extensive, and if anything, the excessive security measures of its interior. How bizarre, you thought, that the safest room in this bastion was a dungeon. Now, here you stand, cold and hungry. If you didn't know any better, you would think you were a prisoner. How ironic that in order to safeguard your freedom, you must rot in a prison. Her trembling breath interrupts these thoughts, reminding you of why you are here. Just at the cusp of womanhood, and even with the dirt and grime, even with her face contorted by fear, the princess was still a lovely sight to behold. Having served her since she was a little girl, watching her grow into the wonderful young woman she is today, it is as if she were your own daughter, and you couldn't be more proud of her. As her worried gaze meets yours, pride sinks to pity. She deserves so much better than these circumstances. These unjust consequences were not earned by any deed she did or did not commit. Only because she is beautiful, and he desired her for himself, even though she wanted nothing to do with him. He comes now to take what has never been promised to him. Until now, everyone bustled with activity as they prepared the defenses to repel him. The pity grows to anger. Anger that no one had even bothered to spare a moment to accommodate her. No bed, no activity, nothing. Only bread and water, given at irregular intervals. And the pangs of your stomach never hesitate to remind you that your last meal was yesterday. More than anything, you're angry at yourself. All you've been able to do for her is to help her run, and it was clear that for that task you were not required. Under normal circumstances, this fact would have made you proud. But now, it just makes you feel useless. Your breath starts to quicken. Your gaze desperately tries to pierce the darkness of the corridor from which the faint, distant sound of cannons emanates, filling you with fear and anxiety. "Can't they stop him?" she asked. The moment her voice graced your ears, everything became clear. This is not the time for fear, anger, pity, or doubt. The best way to serve her now was to remain strong for her. "My dear," you console as you approach her, taking her hands into your own. Where others in her position would berate you for addressing her in such a way, she encouraged it. She has always allowed you to dote on her, always trying her best to make it as easy to serve her as possible, of no one's accord but her own. To her, you were an equal, and to you, that, more than anything, made her so greatly above you, making you feel as much grateful as unworthy to be in her presence. Her soft blue eyes gaze into yours with anticipation, awaiting your answer, and as the rational mind overpowered the emotional, you realize that even with their passionate preparation for the coming battle, it may not be enough. "They are risking their lives for us, their guest. We must have faith in them," you say, making the utmost effort to hide your doubt. Alas, smart enough to come to the same conclusion, she forces a smile, acknowledging the attempt to comfort her. But as the sounds of the battle creep closer, that smile ebbs its way back to doubt. The cannon's roar is now much clearer than it was, now accompanied by the sounds of fire exploding to life, the clashing of steel, and the screams. The cold, still air gives way to the hot air flowing in through the corridor. The faint scent of sulfur fills the air. "He promised to protect me! Is this the best he can offer?" She no longer tried to hide the fear in her voice. "In our retreat, we had no choice but to turn to our allies, who in our time of need have proven themselves good and faithful friends. We are guests in their castle, And despite these accommodations, we are incredibly grateful.
He was caught off guard just as we were. No one could have known that fiend's assault could be so fast or vicious,
you retort.
These men have been working tirelessly with what they have. And I'm sure the armies are still rallying, just in case it isn't enough.
The smell of sulfur becomes more prominent. This realization gives you pause.
Princess, please don't doubt their king. His own son, a great warrior, guards the passage.
Her fear doesn't seem to have subsided, but the doubt she had in our host has. And ultimately, you feel that is the most important issue to address. The monster has destroyed many things. The beautiful peace and friendship our two nations share should not be among them. A wave of heat shoots through the corridor. They must have ignited the fire lake on the other side. If that is true, then he is close. Too close. And it won't be long before he faces the prince. A scream confirms your fear. You turn to see tears in the princess's eyes.
I'm going to give myself to him. Absolutely not. It's me he wants. No one else needs to die. If you give up, then they would have died for nothing.
You say, heartbroken, as you watch the tears run down her face, now warped with despair. Your heart drops and tears fill your eyes. Seeing her like this, it's too much. Your arms suddenly reach out, taking hold of her face, directing her gaze into yours. The involuntary action leaves you just as confused as she is. Your eyes remain locked as you helplessly try to collect your thoughts.
Do you know the way to the capital? Yes? Make your way there as fast as you can. There are several castles along the way you can take refuge at, but do not hesitate to flee if he attacks them.
It's clear she knows what you are saying, but she doesn't want to understand.
What do you mean? Aren't you coming with me? I will buy you as much time as I can. It may not be much, but I know if I go with you, I will just slow you down.
You reply, fully aware that the ankle you sprained coming this far has yet to heal.
No!
She starts to beg.
Please, don't argue. You don't have time.
After a deep breath, you continue.
Princess, serving you has been my life's joy. Please, allow me one request. Anything. Live. Promise me that you will never give up. Promise me that you will live free of this predator.
Sobbing, she nodded. After a moment, she moves in. You wish time could stand still as she embraces your large, bulbous head. Her body pressed against yours. Her warmth. Her breath brushing against your skin. Her wet tears. You try to savor each of these sensations. A nearby scream serves as a cruel reminder of time's ceaseless march. You push her away, and she takes a few steps back, looking to you for as long as she could, before turning and running through the rear escape passage. You turn and face the front corridor, and listen as her sobbing and her footsteps steadily fade away. But before they disappeared, the sound of fighting echoed through the darkness of the corridor.
Should I go help?
You think to yourself.
No, I just get in his way.
Standing there, listening to the sounds of metal colliding, the footsteps dancing about, and the audible exertion of the combatants. It seems to last an eternity, and then, a cry of pain. It was the prince. As you continue to hear him struggle, it is clear that he has just been wounded. Strange. The monster usually strikes to kill. Soon, the prince's cries of pain turned to cries of desperation, and the sound of steel being cut, followed by the sounds of chains being suddenly relieved of their tension. The princess cries become far more desperate, and we hear that sound again. What follows leaves you feeling lightheaded. The sound of the bridge collapsing, and the sharp scream of the prince interrupted by a howl of flame. With a growling roar, he announces himself more as a beast than a man. You go stiff. You try your best not to hyperventilate.
You're shaking uncontrollably.
The strong copper scent of blood almost causes you to retch. The silhouette of a very large man egresses from the dark corridor. From one hand, he drops a very large two-faced battle axe, which crashes loudly to the floor. As the crashing echoes through the room, you close your eyes.
So this is where it ends.
One of many thoughts to go through your head.
I've had a good life.
You had nothing when the royal family took you in. In exchange for being a servant, you got food, shelter, and even some coin to go with it. A very generous opportunity that only a fool would turn down. You never imagined it would be a job that you would love. Becoming a servant of the royal family was like becoming a member of the family. The princess was only a couple years old then. Over the years, you were more than her servant. You were her playmate, her teacher, her friend. You happily did everything you could to serve her. And on that dreadful night, when he came, you were the one to wake her and lead her to safety. You two barely escaped. By the time she was out of harm's way, it was already too late for the rest of the royal family. On the run, you felt so helpless, always wishing there was more you could do to serve her.
An epiphany! The thought hits you like a ton of bricks. The shaking transforms from fear to excitement, as if suddenly inebriated with ecstasy. It was all you could do not to laugh. Oddly enough, you have a feeling of gratitude. You feel grateful to him for granting your wish. Grateful that he has given you an opportunity to serve her once again. If it is for her sake, then you couldn't help but happily embrace death. As you open your eyes, you see him in front of you now in the light, so covered in blood you couldn't tell if his clothing was actually supposed to be red or not. You stand to confront him, and he stops dead in his tracks, seemingly surprised and amused by your total lack of fear. You can't help but smile as you say your final words. Thank you, Mario. But our princess is in another castle.